in this war in Ukraine and how we're going to stop it by stopping the Russian terrorist state. But before we go any further, we'll start this rally, as we always do, with the Ukrainian anthem.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторозі. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу. Що ми, браття козацького роду, душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми, браття козацького.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
My friend, there's been a lot of good news lately in Ukraine. A lot of Russian planes have finally landed for good. But the Russians never miss an opportunity to spread disinformation, to show their defeats, to show their biggest disasters as supposed victories. When the Russians retreat in shame, they say it's a goodwill gesture. When the Russians get beaten up and beaten back into Russia, they say that that was the plan all along. I'm not joking, my friends. We have spoken with many people who claim that the great Russian defeat near Kyiv, where they got absolutely annihilated by a much inferior force in terms of equipment, that it was all according to plan. They was actually trying to distract the Ukrainians, and they lost thousands and thousands of troops in this very expensive distraction, you might say. It's truly, the Russians use the lives of their troops as currency. And that currency is very unstable, just like the ruble. One day it holds up there, it holds for dear life, and the next day, just like the Russian planes lately. But the Russians have been spreading news that supposedly the last plane, the last big plane the Ukrainians have downed, last big military plane, in fact, that was circling around the area of the Ukrainian border, that actually had Ukrainian prisoners of war. That's what they're saying. But my friends, we should learn at this point that you cannot trust the words of the Russians. As the saying goes, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And we have learned that if we are fooled 3 times, that the name of the person who's fooling us is Russia. Because Russia continues to use the same exact kind of rhetoric, again and again and again. And some fools continue to fall for it. We must not be part of those individuals who are fooled by the Russian propaganda. My friends, the Russians have done such things in the past. They have destroyed the Olenivka prison, killing hundreds and perhaps thousands of heroic Ukrainian defenders, of the Azovstal defenders, who fought tooth and nail for freedom and for a future for Ukraine. The Russians have killed them all, committing a huge war crime with that. And they have blamed the Ukrainians of doing so. It's the same argument as we've heard many times in the past about the Dambili Bombas stuff. when they say that the Ukrainians were the one who started this war. How? Who invaded who? Did the Ukrainians invade Russia? Or perhaps the Ukrainians were preparing to invade Russia by demilitarizing and by giving up their nuclear arsenal. I mean, it's ingenious, really. Of course, you give up your nuclear arsenal right before an invasion. Truly, Sun Tzu 101, the art of war, according to the Russians, of course. It's not surprising because the Russians have shown sheer incompetence in terms of leading their troops. It's not surprising that some of them would actually believe in this garbage. But we must remember what they did in Olenivka, because they are likely planning to do something similar right now. This plane that has been shot down by the Ukrainians likely does not have any Ukrainian prisoners. We can't know for sure, but it is likely that the Russians will try to murder these prisoners and then dump their bodies nearby and claim that the Ukrainians killed them, to demoralize the Ukrainians, to blame them for something that the Russians have done in reality. Let's not forget about that, my friends. Let's not forget about the times Russia has lied and about how Russia continues to lie right now. They know they are lying. We know they are lying. They know that we know that they are lying. And yet they lie still. They continue to lie. And the only way to stop these lies is for every single one of us to do what needs to be done, to spread this message to the whole world and tell everybody that the only way to stop this war is to stop Russia. Stop Russia, stop the war.
Stop Russia, stop the war.
Thank you very much. Stop Russia, stop the war.
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 Russia is a terrorist state.
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 Help Ukraine protect peace.
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 Arms keep peace. I never get tired of saying this saying again and again and again, because we need to be repetitive sometimes for some individuals who are willfully deaf to our message to hear it at last. Everybody has skin in this game because radiation doesn't respect borders. The Russians have shown that they are an impulsive and irresponsible state. They continue to shill for the genocidal Soviet Union when it managed to kill more people than even the genocidal regime of Nazi Germany. In fact, they were allies at the beginning of the Second World War. They have signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Treaty, in which they chose to divide Poland in half. Half would go to the Nazis and half would go to the Soviets. The socialist parties in the West have all preached non-interventionism and isolationism of their country, that is, not isolationism of the Soviet Union. They changed their mind very quickly when Nazi Germany attacked. So we have to ask, whose interests do the parties truly defend? The interests of the people who they are defending, or the interests of foreign communist and socialist regimes, like the Soviet Union was back then? This is something we must not forget, my friends. Let's not forget the regimes that have killed the most people, because those regimes and the terrible atrocities that they have done must never be allowed to do so again. We must never allow those things come to pass. That is why we cannot allow Russia to win. Ukraine stands for peace. Ukraine stands for nuclear demilitarization. Russia stands for war. Russia stands for nuclear saber rattling. And you can be sure that the Russians would have used nuclear weapons long ago in the past, many times in fact, if they felt like they would get away with it. Fortunately, the Russians still have the fear of inevitable and overwhelming retaliation from the West. But as long as that fear exists, Russia will behave, at least towards NATO, at least towards the US, at least towards the UK. However, if that fear is no longer there, Russia will use every weapon at its disposal. Russia will use every dirty trick. And dirty tricks is something that they are professionals in. It's something they perfected throughout generations, throughout millennia of the existence of the Muscovite Khanate. Because indeed, Russia is not a European country culturally. Russia is more based on the Golden Horde, on the Mongol Empire, an empire based on slavery and extermination, than they are on the enlightened values of the West. That is why every single Russian oligarch and politician has their children living in this supposed decaying West, as they call it. Why? If the West is so bad, why do they all send their children here? Why are they studying in the most prestigious colleges and universities in the West? In Cambridge, in Oxford, you name it. I'll tell you why, my friends. Because the Russian elites are hypocrites. And the Russians are depoliticized. They have no power over their politics. They can't choose, they can't decide, they can't say a word. They can't even call this war a war. Because they will go to jail for that. That is what we're playing with right now. An expansionist regime that is trying to expand its genocidal tendencies to Eastern Europe first, true, and then to whoever refuses to fight back. Isolationism and non-interventionalism from the West is suicidal because Russia is expanding and Russia needs to be stopped. And the way to stop them is to help Ukraine and provide Ukraine with what Ukraine needs to finally bring this war to an end. Because to appease an aggressor, to appease a psychopath, is to be on the same side as that psychopath. When somebody commits a crime, they are put in jail. There's no attempt of appeasing them. You don't give them freebies just to make sure that they don't commit future crimes. That's nonsense. What kind of accountability will other countries see on the world stage if they see Russia get away with the crimes that they've committed? They're war crimes, countless. And yet, some individuals still preach for negotiation with this country that has broken their agreements every single time. This is why, my friends, our message here in these rallies is to help Ukraine win, not help Ukraine survive. That is the real deal breaker here. We need to move forward until Russia is defeated in Ukraine, until their ambitions in Ukraine are ended for good, not to just help Ukraine survive a few more months, not to try to appease Russia and make sure they don't do it again. What happened in 2008 in Georgia? What happened in 2014 in Ukraine? What happens again and again and again with Russia? When we try to appease them, it backfires every single time. Just like it backfired with Hitler. Why should we allow Russia to become more powerful, become more stable and stronger of an enemy, so that they can attack us later down the path? It's foolishness. We need to face this problem head on now. And this is how we're going to face it. Arm Ukraine as you promised.
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 Fight the jets for Ukraine.
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 Air defense 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 for Ukraine.
My friends, although there's a lot of good news, we must also mention the things that are going less bad so that we are not like Russia. Because the Russians ignore the problems they have. The Russians lie to their government. Their officials are encouraged to lie and encouraged into corruption. This is why we need to call a spade, to call things as they are, and now as we want them to be. There's been a piece of legislation passed lately about stopping exports of liquid natural gas in the US. This is a detrimental piece of legislation, my friends. This is not good, because Europe needs those shipments of gas. It's very important that Europe has an alternative to the Russian gas so that we cannot be held hostage by the Russian terrorist regime. So that they cannot blame us for the things we haven't done. So that they cannot blackmail us with the resources they have. Russia needs to be isolated. That is the only way to chastise them for the crimes they have done at the moment. And we also need to help Ukraine win on the battlefield. So that on both these regards, there is a victory against Russia. But my friends, it's very important for us to understand one key fact. In this whole situation, we need to do what we can to stop climate change. We need to improve the quality of life of every person on earth. However, when there's countries like Russia that are hurting the environment more than any country in the world, well, my friends, we have to first be able to stop them and then worry about the climate. What would the climate matter? What would all of this conversation matter if Russia wins, if Russia takes over more and more countries and Russia does as they please and we are unable to stop them? No kind of climate reforms will help in that situation, because Russia will continue to produce fossil fuels. We must understand the priorities and the order in which they come. First, we need to defeat our enemies. Then, we can push for reforms. That is how we're going to deal with Russia. That is how we're going to deal with all of these terrorist states, like Iran and North Korea. And there are many proxies, such as Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. These individuals are getting paid by the same exact individuals, by the same exact people, by Tehran and Moscow. They are the ones who are spreading these terrorist proxies around the world and are trying to sow dissent in many different countries all over the world. When we say that the war is happening in Ukraine, it does not restrict the fact that the war is not only happening in Ukraine. This war is not a local problem. This war is a global problem. It has always been this way. The Wagner Group is practicing their neo-colonialism in countries like Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Sudan. They're destabilizing those countries. They have created the civil war in Sudan. But that's not the only thing they're doing. Russian troops remain in the region of Transnistria in Moldova. The Russian troops remain in Abkhazia and South Ossetia in Georgia. The Russian troops hold the governments of Belarus and Kazakhstan at ransom. They hold puppet regimes there when the people of those countries don't want anything to do with Russia. They want to be free from the Russian yoke. And we fight alongside with them against the Russian terrorist regime. Слава Україні! Слава нації! Україна! 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 Героям України тричі! And now, my friends, we will have a short musical break.
Сонце зійшло, хай яскраво світить воно, дорого заплачено, ми їх не пробачимо, дорого заплачено. дорого заплачено, так багато втрачено, дорого заплачено. Дорого заплачено, ми їм не пробачимо, хай яскраво світить воно, українське сонце зійшло, хай яскраво світить воно, українське сонце зійшло. Яскраво світить воно, українське сонце зійшло, українське сонце зійшло, українське сонце зійшло, українське сонце зійшло.
Слава Україні!
Слава!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
І нашим захисникам тричі.
Слава! Слава! Слава!
We gather here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. for 2 hours, every Friday at 6 p.m. for 2 hours, and every Sunday at 3 p.m. for 2 hours. And someone recently told us that this peaceful rally it might go in the history as the longest war rally, peaceful rally in the history of this country. We really wished that it was the shortest one, but unfortunately some of the people who you would see by the sound recording, sound equipment, and over there by the tent, they've been here standing since 2014 and even had here 24/7 war rallies where up to 30-40 people would come here and stay here for 12 hours, then go home, someone will take over. And we done it 2 years ago when the invasion started. We done similar protests, but it's unsustainable. We only stand here just because it directly affects 40 million people. It's not few hundred, it's not few thousand. It's 40 million people put their life on hold. There is no family in Ukraine that this war is untouched. Every single family has a member who either is serving, passed away, injured, or being trained and already drafted. More than 15 million refugees crossed European border in 2022. Russia, by invading Ukraine, created the biggest refugee crisis since World War II. That is a fact. And this only happened because a peaceful nation of Ukraine decided 10 years ago to cut ties with any Russian influence. So when you cut ties with Russia, they call you Nazi. When you ask, when Latvia, Estonia, Lithuanian says, since 2000 I grew up in Latvia, my parents moved from Ukraine to Europe. When Latvians say, please, can you speak our language, this is government language, you live in Europe now, Russians refuse. And then you see the news and they say, oh, more than 900 are being deported. An old lady, how can you deport an old lady? Well, 30 years ago, that old lady was in her 40s and she still didn't want to study that language. Russia is subsidizing people not to integrate in society. Russia creates now, as we speak, African Legion. 5 different countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, and 2 other countries. They are creating African Legion to replace Wagner mercenaries, which was fully funded by Russian government, as Putin had admitted. Russia is nothing but a terrorist state. Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Stop Putin, stop the war.
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 Help Ukraine, protect peace.
Help Ukraine, protect peace.
Help Ukraine, protect peace.
Help Ukraine, protect peace.
And we are protecting peace. Before we got invaded in 2014 and full-blown invasion almost 2 years ago, Ukrainian war count was 0. There was no wars. We never attacked anyone. If you want to learn about Ukraine, just have a look online, just put few simple words. The bread basket of Europe. This is our nickname. We have it because of our nature. But if need be, we will defend our future and our present. Because like our grandparents told us, like their parents told them, if you ask any Ukrainian family, we have a couple standing here, and their daughter a few weeks ago told me that during Holodomor in 1932, they were collecting crops and they were stealing their own crops from their own fields because USSR was taking it away. 90 years later, nothing has changed. If they can't steal Ukrainian grain, they destroy it by bombing ports in Odessa, by trying to sabotage grain from Ukraine through Black Sea. Guess what? It's pointless. It's absolutely pointless. 20% of Ukrainian Navy is gone. How can Ukraine do it? Because we have something to fight for. Peace, freedom, and our future. That future can't be in USSR 2.0. They already, Putin last week, he's referring to Donetsk and Lugansk region, he's referring to them as New Russia. And New Russia, and the journalists are joking. Russia has no borders. Russia has no morals, but it will have borders. Look at the regions that they had for half a century. Look at how poor they have their own infrastructure. They want to drag Ukraine into this Stone Age. 40% of Russia, I know it's hard to believe, I couldn't believe it as well, doesn't have sewage. You don't need it if you have a ditch on the other side of the field over there, and every 11th school in Russia does not have an indoor toilet. No wonder they are targeting Ukrainian schools. They partially damaged or fully destroyed 3,500 schools in Ukraine. Because Russia is a terrorist state.
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 Stop Putin, stop the war.
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 But for that we need that air defense that we were asking for, because more than 30% sometimes come through. The other day, out of 8 suicide drones, only 4 got shot down. Russians are learning. Russians are learning how to do it in waves, and they are only targeting 80 to 90% of their targets is civilian infrastructure, city centers. The bigger the city, the bigger the target for them. Because this is what we deal with. When we are targeting something, it's an army base, it's an oil facility that they use to fuel their tanks. We target their army bases, they target our schools. We target their mortar systems, they target our churches. We target their where the soldiers are based, where they occupy the region where they are actually the headquarters in Sevastopol or anywhere else. They target our hospitals. How many hospitals in Ukraine need to be destroyed for you to understand that Russia is a threat? How many times they need to blackmail Africa to lift the sanctions on trade, so they can trade their own grain or what they stole from Ukraine? Guess what? More than 15 million tons of grain has been shipped through Black Sea, and it was exactly the same like before war. So more than 4 months, Russia says we are against the grain deal. in Black Sea. Guess what? Nothing. They couldn't do anything. Only one ship got damaged in last 4.5 to 5 months since they left the agreement, and we shipped exactly the same amount as before the full-blown invasion. They can threaten Finland, they can threaten other countries, but what they have actually done? What if they say something is unacceptable for Russia? This is nothing. Have a look who supports Russia and you will understand their nature. North Korea and Belarus. 3 dictators are helping each other to kill as many civilians as possible. Because Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Stop Putin, stop the war.
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 And soon it's going to be 2 years since invasion next month. And then this spring it will be a year since Putin himself is a wanted man. There's a warrant for his arrest issued in Hague. Guess what Russians do? Russians do what they always do. It's a sitcom that no one will watch. Putin has demanded that a criminal investigation is started against the judges who prosecuted him. Guess why he got that warrant for his arrest? He only got it because he admitted that he had kidnapped, unlawfully displaced more than 19. It was 19,500 plus. That's only what we could count. The actual number, unfortunately, is a lot larger. So last week, 4 children, just 4 children out of 19,500 got saved, and they were reunited with their family. And this is a celebration for us. Every single child, every single soldier that we have exchanged with them, we celebrate. But they refused exchange from last summer until January this year, first week of January, there was no exchange. We asked them, we begged them, please, can we exchange? We have thousands of your soldiers. They don't care. They don't care. They don't care about the living. They don't care about the dead. Our soldiers are saying it's madness. We never seen anything like it, even in the movies. Wave after wave of soldiers. The dead are, the first line is killed and they walk on dead. They don't collect the dead bodies, they just lie there. They just walk past them, they climb over them and they keep walking. Then second wave dies, third comes. If they go back, they have special battalions who will kill everyone who will go back. Exactly like Stalin did during World War II when they say no step back. They had a special system that if you retreat before a signal, you get killed by your own soldiers. So 80 years later, nothing has changed. Nothing. They killed their own. They killed Ukrainians for them. By the way, I have news for you. Apparently, a few months ago, Putin's sweet deal for criminals that you get a clean slate if you kill Ukrainians for 6 months is over now. Now they have 1-year contracts. Guess how it renews? It renews for another year and another year, and the terms and conditions are your contract will finish when the war in Ukraine finishes. This is the new deal. So for more than a year, for about 18 months, any criminal could join Russian army, kill Ukrainians for 6 months. More than 50,000 signed up. Less than 5,000 made it because Ukrainians has killed them. Because if you come to our land to kill us, we have the right to defend ourselves. Because self-defense is no offense. Arm Ukraine.
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 Tribunal for Russian war criminals. Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
Tribunal
And imagine being attacked by war criminals who have so much experience. And they will face someone like my cousin Sergey, who has 2 kids, who never held, until September last year, he never held a gun in his hands, but he got trained. And 3rd of December in Zaporizhia, they brought him and they said to him, until now, they said, just wait for your bulletproof vest, just wait for your weapon, and you will defend Ukraine. We have something to fight for. They have nothing to fight for. Just a paycheck and more land. Just a paycheck in more land. This is a reoccurring thing. I know for many of you it will be hard to understand, but those of us who either were born in USSR or whose parents told us how it was in USSR, how the Ukrainian language was oppressed, how Ukrainian nation as a nation, in all the movies, they ridicule us. We are never successful farmers, no. In USSR, in the beginning of this communist stuff, they said any successful farmer is an enemy of Ukraine. You need to take everything away from him. 80s, 90s came even after USSR broke apart. In all their movies, Ukrainians are either drunks, alcoholics, weaks, prostitutes. We are sub-nation for them. But honestly, it's not just Ukraine. For them, every Georgian, every Armenian, Estonians are too slow, Georgians are too this. For them, only Russians are the superior nation. I wonder who else had that rhetoric in last century. So this is what we deal with. They think they're better than anyone else. They think 20% of Ukraine is new Russia. This is what we deal with. Land grab and destruction. Terrorists attack every single day. City centers, hospitals, and schools. And only for one reason and one reason only. Because Russia is a terrorist state.
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 And because of Russia, so many people can't plan their life. Okay, apart from 40 million of Ukrainians, have a look in the news yourself. Why does every single European country is increasing their defense budget? It was going down for decades, but Russia changes everything. Russia changes everything to something worse, and you can't even imagine how bad it is to be a Russian person in 2022 in September and crossing the Georgian border. I'm hiding here from my government. Yes, the government that I don't mind, but I don't want to go to Ukraine. Is it okay if we hide here? Yeah, I know. We attacked you in 2008. We killed and raped your women and we stole from you. Yeah, because we are bigger. We understand that. Yeah, Moldova. Look at Moldova. Look at Moldova, Georgia, Ukraine. Look what they do in Africa. So many different places. And 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, when Putin looks Macron in the eye and he says, Russian government has nothing to do with Wagner mercenaries. It's nothing. And he's smiling. Last summer, what does he say? It's fully funded by Russian government. $3 billion minimum annually. Guess how much they get back? They get back more than 10 billion by stealing diamonds and other national resources all across Africa. If there is something to steal, Russia will be there. Guess why they want to denazify Donetsk and Lugansk regions? Have a look how many natural resources they have over there and you will have your answers. If they can denazify your fridge or your iPad when you are not looking, they will do that. Because Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia Russia is a terrorist state.
Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
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 And although it doesn't look like it, well, they are bigger than us, well, they are stronger than us, but Russia themselves were giving us a week. They already wanted a parade on a Sunday, on 24th, they attack on a Thursday, on Sunday we have parade, we are in Kiev, maybe another week to prepare and rehearse, yet here we are, almost 2 years later, and we are still standing strong. Guess what? Many people said last year, oh, it was such a unsuccessful year for Ukrainian army. Well, they went forward by 500 square kilometers in the whole year. Every single day, 10 to 1 mortar shells are being shot from Ukraine towards Russian enemy and from Russian enemy to Ukraine. They shoot at us 10 times more mortar shells. They have bigger size army, yet they can't go forward. They get 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. With the speed that they had last year, it will take them more than 1,000 years to take Ukraine. If you call it success, I don't think Putin will see the fruit of his labor. Unfortunately, he's too old to do even a life sentence. But Hague issued a warrant. He can't go to Europe anymore and lie to Macron or anyone else that these mercenaries are not mine, these war crimes are not mine, and the only reason that they are getting more and more sanctions, apart from what they actually do, is what they say. How intelligent you need to be to say, yes, I kidnap children. He expects the world to just be scared. Oh, we can't prosecute, we can't issue warrant arrests. It's Putin. He has nuclear weapons. Well, he has nuclear weapons that most of the aviation that they use right now. Guys, I'm telling you, the sanctions are working. 50% of Russian aviation is used for parts to fly another 50. They had more than 180 emergency landings last year, more than a dozen this year, and it's only January. So when they say sanctions not working, Putin can't feel it, Russians can't feel it. Well, when you are in a plane like the other day and you've been flown as a millionaire in Russia and it just falls down, sanctions are working. If they don't understand how we feel being bombed, that getting medicine, that sanctions don't allow those iPods, those cars, those electronics, they need to feel the consequences of their actions. What do? They just pay their way out of any sanctions. But when they come to Europe, they are faced with reality. When they come to Finland border, they closed the border from last year for several months now. Finland, first thing that they did when they realized that now they will join NATO and they're safe now. Safety. Norway says we have 3 years to prepare just in case if Russia attacks us. Little Norway says they have 3 years. Lithuania and Latvia says if you drink drive in Latvia, your vehicle will be given to Ukrainian army because we want to help, and clearly you are not in a state to drive or you don't understand how it works. You're a danger for us. This car can serve in Ukrainian army. Most of the defense budget, Lithuania says, we will give you anything we can. If you want us to fix your tanks, we will fix your tanks. If you want us to help you with your veterans, to do a rehab, we will help and we will pay for that. Guess who they have border with? Russia. But they are not scared. They are more scared, like Ukrainians, that they can wake up again oppressed by Russians. Like Lithuanians, they were the first ones, one of the first ones who in 1991 said enough is enough. What did the USSR did? They switched off all the TV channels, but guess what? The Scandinavian media, they aired it, and the whole world saw how they treat civilians. Look, since 1991 until now, what do they do with civilians in Belarus when there is an uproar that another rigged election happens? Russia sends armed police to sort out. Look at Georgia, as well in the 90s. How many people they killed in that square. Look how many countries Russia had slaughtered civilians in. And mostly it's their neighbors. But Africa is not their neighbors, but they have national resources. Russia is nothing but a terrorist. Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Stop Putin, stop the war.
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 And this is why, also because of what atrocities Russia does, every single war rally, we take a moment and we have a minute to honor those who Russia have slaughtered. Because many even of the soldiers who fight in Ukrainian army right now, they are ex-civilians because they were called in last 18 months, they were called to defend their freedom, and they happily to do that. We wish we didn't need to do that, but we have to do it for our future. Our future can't be part of Russia. For us, it's a nightmare. For Baltic countries, it's a nightmare. I experienced, because I went to a Russian-speaking school, and I experienced the hatred that Latvians and other people, what they have towards USSR, and when they hear, even they hear that language, like some Ukrainians, they say, when I hear, here even in London, when I hear Russians just laughing and talking about war, don't worry about Ukrainians, don't worry. When we kill enough, they will stop fighting. For God's sakes, they just need to stop fighting. But we are fighting for our survival. Because if Ukraine stop fighting, there will be no more Ukraine. If Russia stop attacking us, there will be no more war. And Ukraine is trying right now, very hard. So that the first war for Ukraine will be the last war for Russia. Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава!
And this is why every single war rally, one of the most important, apart from our national anthem, one of the most important things that we do, we take this minute of silence to honor every single civilian and every single soldier that was slaughtered during this ruthless invasion. Thank you. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
І нашим героям тричі.
Слава! Слава! Слава!
And because Russia is such a big problem, we have always, every single war rally, we have our Belarusian friends standing here, and many Belarusians are fighting on Ukrainian side, because when Russia gets defeated, there will be no one to oppress civilians, and there can be elections in Belarus, and Lukashenko can be prosecuted for his crimes as war criminal he is, for what he did in 2022 especially, and what he did to his people since the 90s. When this war is won, Moldova can breathe easily, because there will be no more threat from Russia in Moldova. Poland can breathe easily because Putin, as he said last year, if he needs to remind Poland, if it keeps helping Ukraine, if Poland needs reminding who gave the western part of Poland to Polish people, Stalin did, he says. He will remind them personally. Baltic states will not have the need to have the biggest NATO training right now, since Cold War is happening only for one reason, because Russia is a threat, a world threat. We are facing them head on with half of what we need. We need more air defense, we need those F-16s, and we needed them 2 years ago. This is why you will hear us say, air defense for Ukraine!
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 F-16s for Ukraine!
F-16s for Ukraine!
F-16s for Ukraine!
F-16s for Ukraine!
And we will get them sometime in the beginning of this year. More than 7, I think it was 7 or 8 countries that committed, and they train already. I know that my friends in America, in Texas, they said, yeah, we heard in the local news that Ukrainians are being trained. That was last year. And we just need those tools to get the job done. And our job is to protect our future. Our job is to protect our land because we were born on it. This is why we just need to win this just to exist. Because this flag means something for us. Russians, they live in the past. Even in their national anthem, they change the words, but they don't change the music. There's two statues that were built in USSR era. Mother Ukraine and Mother Russia. Please, I urge you, have a look at both of those statues and have a look what an uproar was when we changed from hammer and sickle USSR symbolica. When we took it down last year, there was a big uproar, and they are asking Putin, why are this is a disgrace that they are removing something that we identify with. This is part of our identity. In 2023, Russians identify with USSR symbolica. And have a look at those two statues. They are very, very symbolic. Ukrainian mother statue has a shield and a sword. Russian Mother Russia statue somewhere in Russia, I forgot the name of the city. It looks furious, angry. It looks like a mad statue of something very disturbing, and she only has a sword. Because Russia, although they say they are defending themselves, they know only how to attack, destroy, and take over. This is why we are trying to win this, so we have peace in Europe, because Ukraine is the largest city in Europe. This is official. Slava Ukraini! Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Нашим героям тричі.
Слава! Слава! Слава!
We're gonna have some beautiful Ukrainian music, and we're gonna continue our war, Alex. Thank you so much.
Слава Україні! Слава нації! Україна! 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 Героям України тричі! Ворогам України тричі! My friends, I remind you all that our rallies happen here at 10 Downing Street on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock, on Fridays at 6 o'clock, and on Sundays, as we have it today, at 3 o'clock. For all the people who are our regulars, thank you very much, my friends. For all the people who are new, again, thank you very much, and we hope to see you again. These rallies would not be possible without the people who are coming here and who are dedicating parts of their day to come here and spread the good message of the Ukrainian people. And that is unbelievably important, because many people understand what's going on in Ukraine, but not many are talking about it. That is a problem, my friends, because although we are many, there's still more of those who are still unaware. And that is where we come in, and we inform the world so that every single person has the ability to make an informed decision, so that nobody can use ignorance as an excuse when the time comes for a choice to be made, whether people want to live as slaves with Russia or as free men and women with the West. That is the choice that every single one of us has to make, and that is the choice that we will make. World, wake up!
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 Russia is a terrorist state!
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 Help Ukraine protect peace!
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 I love the fact that Yura has mentioned the Ukrainian statue. That is the symbol of Ukraine, one of the main symbols of Ukraine, with the shield and sword, the defender of Ukraine. The Ukrainians have done a very good thing by changing the sigil on the shield, because long ago in the past, that sigil was that of the Soviet Union. We have changed it now. Now, she is no longer a symbol of colonialism. Now, she is no longer a symbol of genocide. Now, she is a symbol of the liberation of the Ukrainian people and a symbol of the future. Because we do not wish any harm on the Russians if they were to retreat from Ukraine and give us back what they took away. There's not going to be any exterminations when Ukraine wins this war. But if Russia wins, you can be damn sure that they will repeat their antics of the past once again, just like they did with the Soviet Union in the Holodomor, where around 10 million people have been killed, starved to death by the terrorist Soviet regime. Let's not forget about that. We must make sure that the world knows these things, so that we know what we are dealing with. The kind of creatures that sit in the Kremlin, that send their people as meat to achieve their own personal goals, to fill up their own personal pockets, not to improve the quality of life of the average Russian. No, that for them is irrelevant. Why is it that the average quality of life of a Russian that doesn't live in Moscow or in St. Petersburg is solid roads? Poland, paved roads. Moldova, paved roads. Russia, only the main cities are connected with paved roads. The rest is wilderness, village, dеревня, as the Russians say. Excuse me, bad accent. Actually, don't excuse me. I'm apologizing. But my friends, I digress. We have to know what we're dealing with. We're dealing with an expansionistic country It does not care about the quality of life of its people. We've heard it many times in the past, these stupid comparisons between the US and Russia. When we say Russia is genocidal, when we say Russia starts wars, when we say that Russia, it betrays agreements, we always hear, what about this? What about US? What about NATO? What about this? What about that? My friends, it's idiotic. NATO is a voluntary organization. Countries that do not want to be part of NATO do not join NATO. Not a single country has been forced to be part of NATO in the past, and not a single one will in the future. Russia, however, the only countries that join any kind of alliance, especially a military one, with Russia, are the ones who are bullied to do so. And Ukraine was being bullied by Russia. And when Ukraine finally stood up to the bully, Russia did not like it. So Russia escalated, because Russia expected that nothing would happen to them. They were wrong. And they will be wrong in the future also, as long as we stand together and as long as we help Ukraine win. All together we will win.
All together we will win.
All together we will win.
All together we will win.
All together we will win.
All together we will win.
Ukraine, stay strong.
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 Thank you, Britain.
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 It's unbelievably important that we show the respect that the great people of Great Britain deserve. To them, to their language, to their culture, to every single part of this country. We are here in full support of the British values and of the British government. And we will always support them in the future. And we are very grateful for the great help that the British people have provided Ukraine. The British people know very well a lesson that has been unfortunately forgotten by many. The lesson that appeasement means suicide. The lesson that to allow your enemy to spread his influence and to continue getting stronger at the expense of others is idiotic. The British people know this. When many countries were getting gold feet and they thought that giving Ukraine tanks was too much, the United Kingdom provided us with their Challenger tanks. When many nations, once again, were having second thoughts and thought the escalation was too much, the United Kingdom gave Ukraine the Storm Shadow missiles. We are grateful for that. And we hope that in the future, many other countries will follow suit and will do as Great Britain has done in the past and as Great Britain has pledged to do in the future. This is one of the countries that supports Ukraine the most. For that we're grateful. And we do not forget the good actions of the good people who have helped us. And we also do not forget the terrible acts that the Russian terrorist regime has committed against us. However, we do not seek revenge. We do not seek killings and any kind of retribution. What we seek is the future. That is always what the Ukrainian people wanted. But that future is impossible by attempting negotiations with the current Russian terrorist regime. The only way the world will have peace in Ukraine and in many other countries where the Russian terrorist regime has started their wars, their genocides, is to finally end the current Russian regime and to make sure that this time Russia doesn't have this delusion of grandeur and trying to be like the supposedly great Soviet Union. The other day, when we were here in this very spot, On the other side of the road, there was a group of people who were watching us. Obviously, they weren't in support. If they were supporting us, they would have joined us. But no, they were looking at us like wolves, starved wolves, looking at people having a picnic in the park. That is how they were looking at us. And one of them, when I mentioned the Soviet Union and their alliance with Nazi Germany, he couldn't take it. He got triggered. His fifis, they were hurt. So he left the safety of his group, he took a step forward and he shouted, "Великий Советский Союз." I couldn't help but laugh. It was funny, truly. And I wanted to ask him a question. Why is this Soviet Union so great? What are their achievements? What are the things that they are so good at? And what is the price of the existence of that genocidal country? A price of blood. A price of countless generations killed, mutilated, and traumatized. But obviously, he did not want to answer. When he said what he wanted to say, he immediately returned to the safety of the group, and shortly after, they left. Unfortunately, my friends, this is what our opposition behaves like. They do not know what to say. They do not know what arguments to give. They can't justify their opinions, but somehow they feel really, really strongly about those opinions, and that's a red flag. There's nothing wrong with emotions. Every single human being has emotions. Emotions is what makes us what we are. However, my friends, we must not allow our emotions control our reasoning. If we feel about something very strongly, we need to be able to explain why, or else we fall into propaganda. And that is exactly what our opposition has fallen for. Our opposition on the far left claims the Ukrainians are Nazis. Prigozhin himself said that he was fighting the Ukrainians for years, and he still couldn't find these imaginary Nazis the Russian terrorist regime was talking about for so long. And Prigozhin was one of the most immersed individuals in this war. He was the only individual who was making gains for the Russian army on the field. The Wagner group did impressive achievements on the battlefield. We need to give them their due. But there were a group of criminals, of crooks, and war criminals also. They deserve no respect. But their achievements and their finesse on the battlefield needs to be recognized. And of course, the Russians continued to spread their lies. And Prigozhin got killed because he was telling the truth in this particular regard. Now let's take a look at Russia. If you call this war a war in Russia, you go to jail for up to 15 years. 15 years for calling a war a war. Now think about that, my friends. And consider the freedom of speech you have in this great country. Consider the luxurious lives we can live. The ability to move from place to place. The ability to choose for ourselves what our future will be. That is the ability that Russia wants to take away from every single one of you. And make no mistakes, Russia is already preparing for that. The plans of a future invasion of the Baltic countries has already been traced. We already have some of those leaked plans, my friends. But not only that, there's been a piece of legislation passed lately that every single piece of land held by the Soviet Union and by the Russian Empire in the past, Russia has a claim to it. Truly insane. But the Russian terrorist regime is that same insanity, that embodiment of insanity that we thought we had eliminated. We thought it was left in the past with the Soviet Union and with Nazi Germany. But no, that insanity is alive and well, and it wants to come back right now. And the only thing that could stop it is us. As the saying goes, the saving of the drowning is a job for the hands of the drowning. It's a Ukrainian saying, of course. And that is what we need to understand, my friends. We need to act. We need to take initiative back from these terrorist regimes of Russia, Iran, and North Korea. We need to take back initiative from terrorist organizations and these proxies, such as Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. These individuals that use every single possibility to attack the peaceful populations around them. The Russians have done that ever since the genesis of the Muscovite state. With Peter the Not So Great, when he changed the name of Muscovy to Russia, when he appropriated the name of the Kievan Rus, the origins of Ukraine, and partially also of Russia. Although very few regions of Russia were part of the Kievan Rus, its heartland was in Ukraine. And that is the meaning of the word Ukraine, Ukraina, within the countries, the heartland, the center. That is what the Russians cannot admit. That is what the Russians refuse and deny with their every breath. Because if they admit it, if they admit that they were wrong and they were lying, that every single part of their existence throughout millennia of their history has been a lie, it will be painful, but it needs to be done. After World War II, when Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan fell, they did not get exterminated because of their crimes, even though they were trying to exterminate others. Because the West is not a genocidal entity like Russia. They changed. They became better. They became more humane. And Russia will change one day. But before Russia changes, Russia needs to be beaten. Russia needs to be shown that their way, that their worldview is dysfunctional. This supposed multipolar world is nothing but an excuse for genocide. And that is exactly what the Russians are planning to do in the future and continue to do it for as long as they can. And that is the key word here. They do it because they can. But if they know that there's going to be consequences, they will do it no longer. That, my friend, is our message. The message we have for the world is this. World, wake up!
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 Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions of Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
Seize Russian assets.
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 Stop Putin, stop the war.
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 Although Putin is the most important piece of this machine of genocide that we call Russia, he is not the only one. Putin is but the key point that turns, the key that turns